Ella, Destroy, Thanos, Darkhawk. All nerfed. But there's good news. Welcome on in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming, and happy leap year, as weird as that sounds, but it's every 4 years, and now, just like it feels like it's been 4 years since our last update, we now finally have one, and it is clearly a doozy. Let's just go right after you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Cool? All right, let's go. First up, they have absolutely done a thing and made Adam Warlock a 5/4. I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel about this because, I mean, they make it very clear here that they are making this a 5/4 because they want to experiment with 5-cost cards, and they're worried about card draw being a mechanic on a 12-card deck. That's something that could be potentially worrisome. So let's try the new thing. Let's put him in a 5-cost so you can get a little power on him finally, justify him, play him down, and get a card draw. But in my head, I just don't understand why 5/4. I know they are very... Look, this is very much so a Marvel Snap issue, right? Look at almost any other card game. There are astronomical sized decks, even anything that's 30, 60, 48, whatever, depending on the game you play. That's one thing to have a card draw out of that, and it's only 2% of the deck, 3% of the deck. Any card draw in Marvel Snap, that's 8% of your deck. That's a whole nother number to deal with, and that's a very large mechanic to work with. So how do you look around it the other way? So I don't know if this is just the answer, because 2-0 OG, here's how bad he was. And we have this confirmed from Glenn. It is one of the only cards that has ever had a worse win rate than Agatha. So 2-0 was already really bad. And they think that this is the solution. I just don't see it, because we could have had a 5-8 and maybe still not play him, because 5-8 would be literally him plus Gladiator, the OG version of him, now OG, and Gladiator. Play that down on 5. Most cards are going to be destroyed by, you know, Gladiator anyway, so, and then you get a card draw if you're winning the lane. Same effect, right? So I don't know. Look, I know they're scared, and they're rightfully scared, because it's not something that you want to have be Zabu'd, for example, right? You don't want it to be cheated out necessarily for card draw, easy card draw mechanics. So, you know, maybe there's a War Wave type thing where we get it out on 4. Is that beneficial? Because Wave is still good stats. That's 3/5. And now you're looking at 9 stats over 2 turns, maybe. I don't know. It feels a little off. I'm not sold on this. Are you? But I am sold on this. I am sold on Darkhawk at now being a 5/4. I'm actually very excited for this for a variety of reasons, okay? First off, number one, it's a nerf in the decks that he currently exists in. And most of the play lines in which you want to play him as a primary win condition, I think is the better way to look at it, then it makes a lot of sense, because you try to cheat it out right now with Zabu and play it on turn 5 with something else, going into a Mystique on turn 6 with then some extra things. So on one end of it, you're still looking at the same line. You're still looking at Porygon 1, Zabu 2, Rockslide 3. You do something on 4, Darkhawk 5, and then Mystique plus Shang-Chi or some other tech or whatever on 6. That line still exists. You're removing one other card potentially from play, but you're still okay, nevertheless. You just can't Zabu it out on 3. And I think that that's the one specific ordering piece that changes, and changes how we run the Darkhawk package. Because we think of Darkhawk package, we think of put Darkhawk and a couple of rock guys. Normally it's in a Zabu deck. Now you're looking at it completely differently, where you don't have to have it in a Zabu deck, because think about it. A standard 12 deck game on 6 turns still means that on a regular game, no limbo, no extra card draw mechanics, on average, you have 3 cards left in your opponent's deck on the other side, which means at a 5/4, the average stats of Darkhawk is 5/10 as an ongoing. And then you can further past it with a simple Rock Slide and or Korg and or Black Widow. Like, there's so many different ways that this deck now really does still work, but we're just gonna have to learn to adapt to it. We've lost exclusively the Zabu cheat out on 3 or the double play mechanic on 6, but Darkhawk is still going to be a very good card, so much so that in today's current meta, get ready to start seeing Darkhawk put into your Thanos decks, because the Thanos mirror matchup, Darkhawk is going to potentially be larger than Blob, and that's a scary thing. Similarly to how Destroy players are very scared right now because they've lost their Forge, and so did Bounce. Now it's a 2-2, and it doesn't feel as good. It doesn't feel as good. It's no longer the cheap, easy fodder piece to just remove a little bit, you know, from that carnage and clear the lane, and you're still getting extra power out of the mechanic. But at a 2-2 standpoint, I'm thinking it gets maybe half the play it does now. And based on what they've been seeing and that it's a top 5 most played card, that's probably a good thing. That's a really big hit. It's still a total of 4 stats on the board. The thing that was so nice about Forge was the easily played into any turn mechanic. At a 2 cost, now you're competing with all of these other techie 2 cost cards. You're looking at your Shadow King and thinking, do I need Forge for power or Shadow King? And 9 times out of 10, you're probably taking that Shadow King because it will remove more power than Forge will give. So I'm not 100% sure either with this one. I do think you will still see it. It won't replace certain cards, but it will make you rethink about your ordering on when you're adding your power rather than just the plug and playness of a 1 cost that adds 2. Now you're thinking about, okay, does it make more sense to have the RNG thing of America Chavez, who we'll talk about in a moment? Is it making more sense to look at the Hulkbuster for that extra power because it's a 2-3 and I'm playing it afterwards versus Forge on the before with guaranteed predictability? So there's a double-edged sword here that really will pigeonhole what Forge will do. So for that 1 cost, they give him that 1 more power. We go back to the OG version, if you will, of Forge from forever ago internally, and now we're settled at this. I like this change for Forge to balance him, not nerf him, but it does hurt the specifically Deadpool deck, which is probably where it needed to be hit the most. Ant-Man's also getting an extra +1 on his ability. And I think this is just a mix of power creep, and here, let's give Cerebro 5 another tool. I don't really think there's too much else we really need to say about Ant-Man outside of the fact that, look, it's a great card. And Thanos Zoo and Zoo decks in general, Valk decks, man, they're gonna absolutely love this. An extra power for him for doing nothing? Yeah, I'll take it. But backing up to Chavez, as I alluded to earlier, now because they've made Forge a 2-2 instead of a 1 cost, now they've brought down America Chavez to being a 1-2. That gives the +2 to the top part of your deck. So now you can play her on turn 1, and whatever you draw next will get that +2 power. So instead of her total stats being 2-5, now her total stats are being 1-4. And in general, that does feel better. However, you're losing the consistency side of guaranteeing who's going to be getting that power exactly, like Forge was giving. Because Forge was giving a guaranteed 2 power, who you needed to give it to at the very specific moment they needed to get it. Now it's, okay, I can give you 2 power for cheap. It's just not maybe guaranteed to be the card that you want it to be because we're not 100% sure yet what it is. So maybe there's an increase in Howard the Duck play that gets mixed into some kind of deck here with America Chavez, and we start seeing a Cerebro 2-piece where Chavez and Howard the Duck get mixed in together. They can receive the buffs, and now your Cerebros are guaranteed to get that 2 power because Chavez easily slips into that whole mixture of everything. Maybe there's a play in there. I don't know. But I like this change for Chavez as an overall power change for her, but I would have liked it better if she was a 1-1 and the cost of that unknown target, instead of it getting +2, getting +3. So it's still your total of 4 power, and you're still getting the fodder cheap ability of that 1-1, but you're already playing for the unpredictability of what another card could be getting power. It could be one that's absolutely useless. potentially, and you're not going to play that card based on the curve that you've already drawn. Chavez has come a really long way, and now she's down to a 1 cost, and that's even weirder. America Chavez can now be fodder for Lockjaw, who's been completely transformed. He's a 4/5. So yeah, D-Money, you got your wish. You got your 4-cost Lockjaw. This might be a buff. Hear me out. So 4-cost dog. What does this do? Number one, it actually allows you to play Black Swan into the Thanos decks now. Because now you're not competing for how many energy cheats do you need. You could play Black Swan and then Lockjaw and the Freestone and still keep that going. So Black Swan gets her increased purpose. So the Season Pass gets a buff. That's always good, okay? Number two, normally in a Lockjaw game, even if you put Lockjaw down on 3, you don't need to toss 3 stones more often than not to win a Lockjaw lane. It's very rare. Normally you're looking at cheating out something big, you know you got that big thing out, and then you move on to another lane. Or you have a vision slide into that lane. You have something to work with. So I don't know if we necessarily need that, but I guess maybe just changes the curve, changes the need for the curve to be so dramatic and chaotic. And now it's an okay stats. Now it's at 4/5. So all those times that you whiffed on a stone, you tossed in your time stone and got out a reality stone, this is a buff in that aspect because you don't whiff. Out of 3 chances to whiff, now you only have 2 chances to whiff. So you also have a much more refined group in chance to hit. So on one end, you could look at this as a, nerf because yes, you can't get it out. Is this going to end up being a Zabu focused card to get Zabu on 2, Lockjaw on 3, and play all of the cats and dogs together in a discard archetype, for example? No, I don't think so. I don't think that this is going to be a new Thanos variation. I do think that this is bad for discard, and this helps reduce the hella chaos, no pun intended, but also pun intended, that we're seeing with Lockjaw, because now 4-cost is one of the more important turns for discard decks. This now hurts that. So we remove the Lockjaw variation side of Hela, and now we kind of lean that discard archetype to have one less dependent cheat mechanic, and now you're focusing on exclusively the discard RNG and the timings. We go back to seeing potentially more invisible woman decks coming back again for discard, even if it's not using the full MODOK Hela combinations. It's just an easy way to guarantee, let me put the power over there for later, instead of trying to pull out the Lockjaw cheats that we see with discard. In Thanos, I see it just changing Thanos. I don't see it nerfing Thanos. I see it buffing Thanos because now it's better power and reinforces you to have a reason to put a 3/5 in your deck that allows you to play your stones for free on turn 4 and dump your hand, getting all of the good cards for turn 5. So I'm not sold that this is a nerf to Thanos Lockjaw. It is definitely a nerf to Hela Lockjaw, but it's something. Maybe Hela starts seeing Swordmaster now because he's getting a power creep buff. I mean, he's a random hitter, and honestly, good. It's good. You have a 3/7 that hits 1. Now you have a 4/8 with Hellcow that hits 2. So now there's progression there. That makes a lot more sense. It's just like how you had old Hellcow at 4/6 and Swordmaster at 3/6, and it never made any sense. But now there's a need to move up these 3 power cards and make them stronger progressively. This is just another way to do that. So you're guaranteeing 1 extra power. Now he's competing in stats for the spot with Proxima Midnight. Do you need the discard, or do you need the discard to land? The discarded, if you will. So I like the Swordmaster getting a little extra power here. It just thickens that aspect of the deck. And speaking of thick, can we talk about what might end up being the secret best buff again in this? Move is getting another buff. I said this with the dagger change as well, that it might be the secret best buff of that OTA. This might be the secret best buff of this OTA of giving more power to Vulture, because think about it. If you have a Vulture-focused move deck, where Vulture very often gets cut, because he only ends up being a 3/8. If you move him twice, that's 3/13 in his current standpoints. There's a big difference between 3/13 and 3/15. Yet alone, if you put the combination together of Iron Fist, Ghost Spider, and Heimdall in a classic standard move deck, 3 moves with not a lot of movement needing to be chaotic out of turn even, that's a 21 power Vulture now versus a 18 power Vulture. And 21 is a very scary number to think about for Vulture because it's incredibly easy to obtain. Him getting that power does change the ordering competition as well, because as an odd power, it does have a potential chance, if you're playing a dagger deck, to now tie your dagger and have 2 9s on the board for a Mr. Strange to move simultaneously. Doctor Strange to move simultaneously also. There's a lot that can be changed because of Vulture's one individual power now. Cloak can see a lot more play in move decks again. This might be actually most likely, is the best buff of this OTA. But which is your favorite? Which do you like? What are you happy about? What are you sad about? What are you angry about? What do you just need to rant about? What's your favorite emoji? Let me know down in the comments either way. Appreciate you. That's the update for the leap year here, 2024. We'll see y'all next time.